What's up, football-loving maniacs? Time for another edition of Three Honest Lads. Continuing on in this wondrous venture, both East Coast and West Coast of the USL Championship. We're going back to the supporters groups. This time we're going to the Northeast. I start with, however, my compatriot, Michael Watts. Mike, how we doing? A little cold? Got a sweater on, I see.
I do, and it's a hint. Where are we going? Where are we going, Devin? We're not in an igloo anymore.
One of the oldest and brightest and most beautiful supporters groups of the entire USL Championship said the Northeast. We're going to my father's home state. Got some family up there. It's not Mike Watts, even though the sweater looks good on him. It's the Steel Army from the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, and we've got one of their founding members, Dan Yost. Dan, how we doing today, buddy?
I'm pretty excellent. How about you two gentlemen? Doing well?
You know, I don't eat breakfast, so I had my apple juice, got a little sugar rush going. Hands still shaking, which means I haven't had a drink, so that kind of sucks.
Actually, I can fix that, Devin. Do you want to talk about Lily Ball? Okay.
Sure. Okay. I'm in for that.
Okay.
Look at you with the Corona. I mean, I would try and do that, but I have to drive this kid around, and apparently
this is the only Rona for me.
Well, apparently it's frowned upon when you drink and then get in a car and then drive your youngster around. So that's not going to happen in the near future. Dan, are we partaking in any beverages on your end?
We're going Sierra Nevada on my end. The hazy IPA, fantastic beverage, if I might say so myself.
Nice choice. Perfect little midday. And by midday, I mean mid-morning. By mid-morning, I mean 11 a.m. And it's scrumptious. Dan, you know, when Mike and I set out on this venture to encompass the entire league, you know, we've gone a bunch of different angles. We've talked to the Ledgehogs from Louisville City. We talked to the guys from Phoenix Rising, and it's supporters groups. There's some subtle nuances. There's some crazy things. But for you guys, when I reached out and I had the opportunity to talk to a couple members of your organization, I said, when you kind of go through where their league is at now and where it's come from, you guys have pretty much always been there. I actually had the opportunity and got offered a contract back in probably 2006, 2007. Gene Klein was your manager at that point in time.
Yeah.
A lot of things have changed. The logo has changed. The color has changed. But the supporters have always been there. So we felt like we needed to talk to the Steel Army. And everybody said that you are our guys. So walk me through the journey, at least in your eyes, of what has been the progression for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds and the Steel Army and your tenure there as a fan.
Yeah, so to take it back to the start of the Steel Army, it was coming in late 2007. That's when the team went on the 1-year hiatus, going from one ownership group to the next. They announced in, I believe it was November of 2007, that they were coming back after their 1 year off. So it was that December through the now defunct internet chat room that a bunch of people decided it's time to start a supporters group. They had their first meeting at a Scottish pub down on the south side called Piper's Pub. They had that first meeting, and from there they decided to kick this thing off, and that was basically the birth of the Steel Army.
I'm going to preface this by saying there was a hurricane a couple of years ago down in Florida where our production studio is. So I came to Pittsburgh and did a game with the legendary Paul Child. And it is, for the life of me, there are few experiences that will be better than that as an announcer. The Paul Child stand down on the Steel Army side of the field shows that there's soccer going far further back than that chat room, the Riverhounds making the move into USL. Why was that connection so important for you guys to foster?
Well, I think, speaking for a couple other people and a bit of my input as well, I think for a lot of us, our first real connection of soccer in Pittsburgh that some of us were alive for and could remember was indoor soccer at where the Penguins used to play, the Civic Arena, the Igloo, the whatever you want to call it. And so when you go back to those years of indoor soccer, the one name, there's a couple names, but one of the biggest names that stayed around in the Pittsburgh scene was, of course, Paul Child. And he stayed connected through the indoor years up through the start of the Riverhounds. He was on that first staff back when the team started. And so he was kind of that one person who bridged the gap between what people remembered in their younger years and what we had in front of us now. So Paul was that link, and he's kind of come to represent Pittsburgh soccer for most people who are around today. And so it just became fitting that if we're going to name this stand, and we kind of forced the issue of the club to do it, I'll name drop Chris Espo was the member who really pushed for this to happen. And it finally did happen. We got the name changed to the Paul Chow stand. And we just thought it was the one proper thing we could do to link the old to the current.
Dan, I referenced Gene Klein. Obviously, we were just talking about Paul. You bring up guys like Justin Evans, Mark Steffens, Dave Brandt, Bob Lilly. I'm referencing head coaches, of course. There's been a tenure here and a positive progression where the rebranding of the club. Highmark obviously comes in, fantastic views on the Monongahela, and now the winning ways, where, especially since Bob Lilly has taken over, it's regular season success, it's regular season championships. We'll get to the playoffs in a minute. In that progression, what does the culture look like in Pittsburgh, and how have the steps taken there? Because we always hear the Steel Army on the sideline. We see the banter online within your supporters groups. And it seems like as the team is taking those positive steps, so are all the fans within the organization as well.
Yeah, it's been a very positive handful of years here, especially when we got to Bob came on board and we finally got the branding changed, updated, even though there's something to be said for holding on to that 90s cartoon nostalgia of branding that a lot of USL clubs had for a while. But I think it was proper to get something a little bit more modern without going over the top with it. But the culture for supporters has grown tremendously in the past. If you go a little bit before then, in the past 6-7 years, you went from having to watch games at a high school. So obviously there was no tailgating, there was not much pregame. You basically had to go to a local bar to socialize, and then kind of caravan up to the stadium, up the hill, and then back down. For a while, people were meeting actually at a hotel lobby bar to kind of pregame and postgame. So then part of that was, of course, getting Highmark Stadium. It became a place that was in the city. It was a place that was centrally located for a lot of people. And it was something you could call your own. So that helped tremendously just to have ownership over something, which is what the stadium provided. And then just because you could connect with more people, you could sit around for a couple hours before a game. You could shake hands, toast a beer, make connections with other people who enjoyed soccer. That's really what helped this group grow more than anything. It was just the having the space and ability to connect to one another. It wasn't on chat room. It wasn't the people who could only make it to this part of the city for these kind of awkward start times of games or whatever. Now everyone could meet in one place, and that's if there's anything that really helped this group grow, it was that physical space that we could take ownership of.
And you guys get the space, and you've always had an owner that's shown the ability to spend money and push this team along, but didn't have the right coach. And I had talked to Dave Brandt when he took over, and I appreciated what he did, brought in some good players, but then you get Bob Lilly, and you find a guy who puts out a series of posters and online classifieds to bring players in for combines and then turns them into all-stars year after year after year. Is there something, it's interesting to me because in some ways it makes the Riverhounds roster a bit transient because he's always finding the next guy. But you've also had guys like Canardo Forbes who's signed again and been there forever since Bob came in. Try and describe that, where really, like, outside of Kevin Kerr, it didn't feel like a lot of guys were around for a really long time, and still supporting that team and trying to see it grow into a contender.
Yeah, it's I guess it's something you just have to accept as part of the program. I would take it back to a couple years prior. Speaking of Mark Steffen, the one bus trip we took up to Rochester was in the Steffen year. And we got up there, and it was a monsoon. There was just we took a whole bus up there. We're all excited. We get up there, and it's just buckets of rain coming down. We're the only people in the stadium because everyone from Rochester is too smart to be out there in a downpour watching this game. So we're there. It's a joke of a game. It should have never been played. There's just standing water on this old beat up turf. The Hounds, we get one opportunity because Rochester defender slips in a puddle. Our guy shoots, the ball stops on the goal line in a puddle. So like the puddles negated each other. And then Lily's Rhinos win on a terrible penalty call. And they win 1-0. Mark Steffen gets sent off for the only time in his coaching career. But a lot of us got back onto the bus to go whatever 5.5 hours back to Pittsburgh that night. Those of us who were smart enough to bring a change of clothes were fine. Those who did not bring a change of clothes were miserable. But we had a conversation on the bus going, in no disrespect to Mark Steffen, but you just see what Bob has done. What at that point, Bob Lilly, it's one name, Bob Lilly. What he's done, how long he's been in the league and been in lower level soccer, and you're going, what would it be crazy if that guy ever ended up in Pittsburgh? And who knew coming down 2.5 years later it was going to be a thing? But even back then, having that conversation, having that type of presence of what he's able to do with a bunch of guys you didn't really hear too much about. So you didn't know the whole Bob Lilly story at that time, but you knew back then it'd be great to have someone like his caliber come into Pittsburgh. But now he gets here, he gets to Pittsburgh, and you do have to kind of take the ups and the downs, which is going to be, there's going to be a lot of roster turnover. It's basically you sign a guy, it's going to be for the year plus an option year. Of those options, he's going to take about half of them. And then more often than not, when that option year is gone, the player's going to be gone. Kennard Farbs is an exception. He just signed his a new contract. That's going to be his third contract signed with Pittsburgh, which is amazing and great. But again, you held on to like Tommy Van Kuyzeel. He was able to renegotiate that contract, so you got him for 3 years. Ryan James, much the same story. But yeah, I think we've had a lot of this in the last couple of days. Now they just announced that there's going to be 6 players coming back. There is frustration that you don't get a connection with a lot of these players, especially after this past year, because you didn't really get to see any of these guys too much in person. So there is frustration with it. But on the other hand, it's a proven formula that he has to work with. It's going to bring results. He's going to find players that you've never heard of from smaller schools or underheralded players dropped off of other rosters, and he makes it work. So I think a lot of us just have come to accept that you may not get to see your favorite players come back year after year after year, like you kind of see in Louisville and a couple other places. But on the other hand, Bob's he's going to be wise with his contracts. He's going to be smart with how he allocates his budget, and he's going to find a way to make it work. I mean, especially it hasn't not worked yet. So why abandon the ship?
Dan, I love the rain story. And Watts, I don't know if you remember this or not. You weren't on the call with me. I was actually with Tyler, but we were talking, it was 2017. We were talking seeding going into the playoffs. Of course, at this point in time, Bob Lilly is still with the Rochester Rhinos. And I was on air and I remember saying the way that things are playing out. And I said, nobody wants to go to Capelli. And I meant that in the nicest way. I meant it because it's a very difficult place to play. Bob Lilly's the coach, but the rain kind of signifies that as well. You said it's a proven formula. And I agree with you. Everywhere Bob Lilly has gone, he's been successful. For my money, he's going to be in the U.S. Soccer Hall of Fame. I think he deserves it. Everything that he's done for this country, decades plus. That being said, his time at Pittsburgh hasn't exactly gone successful come postseason time. There's the 2018 letdown with Bethlehem Steel in the playoffs in PKs, of course. 2019, you guys smacked the Legion around in the first round, then lose to Louisville. 2020, you have to write it off for what it is, but at the same point in time, a very good team. I argued for a long period of time that you guys, if not the best, were definitely top 2 or 3 in the Eastern Conference. Another early exit to Louisville. From a fan perspective, is there frustration there that success hasn't necessarily carried over into the playoffs?
There is, but not with me. I think this is where you start to see a bit of a difference between some of us who've been around a little bit longer and some who have come on board more recently. There is frustration that Louisville has become this hill you have to climb in the playoffs, and they haven't done it so far. And it goes back to the previous question we just talked about, where Louisville brings back a lot of their guys year after year after year. They have continuity. That's not going to happen here in Pittsburgh for the most part. So there's frustration with that, and we all look at that is more or less the hill that has to be climbed if they want postseason success. So there's a frustration on the parts of a lot of people. Me personally, I just look back to 2016, 2014, some of those other years. We're a top 2 or 3 side in the regular season. When, and go back 2 years ago when you had a truly balanced schedule, Pittsburgh ends up on top. I love it. I'm more willing to look at the playoffs as a more of a crapshoot, especially because it's one leg, it's not two. And I am personally a little more forgiving for these playoff hiccups, even though they are annoying, and it's worse because it seems to be consistently Louisville. But I personally will take continued success in the regular season when you play every team, twice, maybe 3 times, as a better measuring stick for how good this team is than a 1 month sprint, best of ones.
So I'm going to follow up with that by leading with this. When I first came into this league in 2015, imagine being at the time, I guess, 23-year-old broadcaster calling the final game of the season, championship game, Rochester Galaxy 2. The first coach I meet in this league is Bob Lilly in outside Capelli Stadium. I don't remember what it was named then. And, I'm going, this is great. We're getting all this info. Everything's good. Of course, I have John Hartz with me, which doesn't hurt. I told him early last year, hey, by the way, just, thanks for that, welcoming me into the league and everything, because eventually, I stuck around for 5-6 years now. But that was my first pro game. He went for 50 minutes about every nuance of that championship game, and it was amazing. It was amazing. The memory on this guy. I hate to say he's got the memory of a rhino, but he does. It's incredible. Or an elephant or whatever large crusty animal. I'm not physically comparing him to, just mentally. With that in mind, when you see interviews with Bob Lilly, when you see how he's described, portrayed, what do you think the biggest misconception is among your fan base, or maybe among the media, in how he and that style is portrayed?
Okay, so the best way I could maybe relate to that is Bob is announced as the new coach in the 17 and 18 offseason. We have our holiday party coming up a month or so later in December of 17. And we get in touch with the club. Is there any chance that Bob could come by? Everyone would love to meet him. And we get back, yeah, he'll come down. He's not going to be able to stay for very long, but he definitely come down, and he wants to meet some of the fans and all that kind of stuff. Bob gets down there. That year we had the party in the bar that's at the stadium. Mm-hmm. Bob shows up, and the couple of us that were in the know knew he had 30-40 minutes, just kind of walk around, shake some hands, answer some easy questions, and get out. It's now 2.5 hours later, and Bob's still there. I'm trying to shove the second beer into his hand, but he's trying to refuse it. In those 2.5 hours, he may have answered a dozen questions, because every answer was so detailed, so methodical, so thought out. They weren't just coach speak responses. They were, honest, legitimate answers that he wanted to give. And the amount of detail that he wanted to go into was amazing. And the thing that we heard before when he was announced before he got there was like, don't say he's a defensive coach. He doesn't really like it. And we're like, okay, whatever, sure. I mean, come on. And then someone, of course, at that party brought up how he's a defense first coach, and like you saw the light switch a little bit. And he immediately took somewhat offense to it and went on a good 15-minute explanation of how he's not a defense first coach, even though defense is very, very important in the game. But for a guy before I met him, who came off on TV kind of dismissive, kind of gruff, kind of just straight taskmaster looking type thing, the man is nothing but a pleasure to talk to. And he's done various things with the supporters group. We early this past season, before we restarted play, he did an online chat with a bunch of us that again went way longer than any of us expected it to go. And just the guy thinks about the sport all the time. He thinks about how he presents himself all the time, and he really wants to get everyone locally to think about the game in a different way and be more engaged as a spectator of the sport. And I will say personally, it's definitely made me a better, more educated fan of the game. And I could safely say it's probably the same for a lot of us.
And to follow up on that, I totally agree. I think if you only saw him on the sideline, you'd think gruff. And when you talk to the guy, he could not be more genuine about his passion for the game and trying to grow it. And just like, and Dev, I think you'd agree. We've interviewed him how many times over the past few years for national games, but also for local TV games. And it's just like, he's a genuine guy. What you see is what you get when you talk to him. He's transparent. He's genuine. I agree. He's a joy.
Yeah.
We after when they won the regular season last year in 19, they came back from Birmingham. We met them at the airport, and we wanted to get a big group picture, like victory selfie, with Bob, because Bob never. We always, when the team wins at home, we get everyone gets down to the front of the section. We kind of pick our man of the match, kind of, and we get a victory selfie with that person. And so and Bob never comes over. So this was like our one chance. Everyone's happy. Everyone's excited. Let's get Bob for a victory selfie at the airport. And the one person who was going to go ask Bob if he would do it, he was always kind of nervous because he never spoke to Bob personally before. So he was all kind of nervous, like, is Bob going to snap at me because I asked for a picture? And so it's part of the reason we kind of coaxed him over there to do it. And Bob's pulling the van around to help, load up bags and stuff. And the one guy goes over and talks, hey, Coach Lilly, we were wondering, we do this thing like a victory selfie. Would you mind like doing a picture with us? Would that be all right if it's not too much trouble? And Bob's like, yeah, come on, let's do it. And he gets out of the van, comes around, and there's like 15 of us just, get around Bob, take some pictures. And it was just hilarious to see this one kid who didn't know Bob that well and was just scared because of the perception, and then go ask for a picture. And Bob's like, yeah, come on, let's go, let's do it. It was hilarious.
Dan, you said that in that first meet and greet, Bob refused the second beer. By the way, when the pandemic gets out of the way and we'll meet in person and get to hang out, feel free to give me 2, 3, or 4. I won't refuse them. I will gladly pay it back to the community. Pay back to the community. That being said, there's a rumor that, as we have entitled it, Lily Ball, there is a rumor that a game may or may not be circulating around the United States, circumventing the globe, that involves said beer or 2 or 3. Is it true? Yes or no?
Get them drunk, Devin.
But if yes, bark twice if you're in Pittsburgh.
What of it?
Is it true? Is the game? Oh, so is there anything true about Lily Ball? Yes or no? And if I brought Lily Ball up, would something happen?
I don't know if that works the way you're editing this,
Okay.
but you're quickly getting through this beverage. So
Gotcha.
if you keep it up.
Gotcha.
Now, I would like to bring something up with you two fine gentlemen. Speaking of drinking games that involve Lily Ball, we have a bit of a bone to pick with you two gentlemen.
Ooh.
you do a fair amount of Pittsburgh games, especially this past year.
Because you're
And
good.
we get to hear the lovely vocal cords of you two. But not every game that you do that features Pittsburgh does not also feature Indianapolis. Yet every time you do a game involving Pittsburgh, we have to hear the name Tyler Pasher. And so every time Tyler Pasher comes up, we have to chug our beverages. And so you're making us go through a lot of alcohol, especially in the first half of games, probably a second beverage at halftime, and then like half a beer on the third game. So if you could just please tone down the Tyler Pasher references on games where we're not playing Indianapolis, that would be swell.
So I'll start there. I've actually never heard someone to tone down a drinking game. That's an interesting one. I do see comments online about it, and I can understand from a Pittsburgh fan's perspective how maybe sometimes references of a certain person. See what I did there?
I'm not trying to get this guy wasted in the middle. Dan can't handle us saying it over and over again.
There you go. Yeah, it could be frustrating. I've actually been tagged on stuff, and I've seen people said my name about it. I have no problem with it, by the way. I think fans should understand that. I think one thing fans need to understand is that this year it was a little, it wasn't relevant in previous years. This year was more relevant because of the way that groups were set up and pandemic. And a lot of times that was, at that point in time for Pittsburgh, that was the measuring stick. And so references were made for sure for fans in Pittsburgh, because I want to be very clear. It's not the, and I'll say it this time, it's not the Tyler Pasher show in the Eastern Conference. Mike will tell you that if I broke down Indy, I'm very well aware of what he's capable of, but more importantly, what he's not capable of. And in my arguments for the Riverhounds over the course of this season, it was, look, they're good here, they're good there. This is also a team that doesn't matter if they dominate for 90 minutes, it's sometimes the extra time. And that's where the great man from Indy did get you guys in trouble. And so I made references to a lot of broadcasts where when games were going on and Pittsburgh wasn't playing well, or they were and they weren't necessarily producing results, I would make reference to that. I always saw that being brought up on social media. I'm a very thick-skinned person, but I think sometimes fans don't necessarily get the explanation of that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of on our side of things. So I'm going to double it up now in broadcast to make sure that not only do I not say his name, I will just use your coach's name more so that the beer distribution is still the same. I've just allocated in a different area.
That's, I mean, if it's not, that's, it just turns sad drinks into happy drinks, which is much better.
It's funny. I'm going to add to that. It's just
the issue is that he was a former Pittsburgh guy, and we more or less totally misused him. So it hurts a little bit more. That's the main thing.
Fair. I think the other side of it, from a play-by-play perspective, and we're definitely opening the steel curtain here for a moment. It's amazing to me, how few people who follow individual teams sort of know what the MVP conversation is, or what the biggest goal of the season was. And obviously for that goal to happen on ESPN2 is its own deal. But did I just do was MVP? I'm trying to figure out your triggers.
I'm just trying to drink a beer at this point.
Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. But I think there's probably folks in Louisville are like, enough about Canardo Forbes. He's not playing in this game. But at the time, he's in the MVP conversation and leading in assists. So it cuts both ways. It's with us being the primary national pairing, it's kind of funny how our minds warp to how can we invite more people into understanding everything. But yeah, that pissed me off too. I was watching Browns Ravens this week, and they're like, and of course, who could forget Art Modell? And I'm like,
yeah, thanks. We forgot. Yeah.
Oh,
Dan, but I have one more before we get you out of here. So there's the two references, games. Beer may or may not be involved. We get that. We'll brush that under the rug.
It is.
I'm always curious. We get it, Watts. I'm actually always curious. Some of the I don't want to say fun things. Those are the fun things. What are the things that don't show up on camera for the Steel Army? What are the things that, you referenced the pub way back when in 2007 or 8, when you guys got it going and then that first meeting, and then the internet chat rooms, which I didn't know were non-existent anymore. What are the small things that maybe people
That
at home
specific
don't?
one, I remember the name of this.
Yeah. But what are the people?
So
what
what
are
are
the
we
things
doing?
that maybe people at home don't know? Yeah. Is there pregame traditions? Is there anything after the game? A special drink? Anything like that maybe we could share with the national audience?
Yeah. So, again, if there's anything that I've learned in the past year about other teams and other supporters groups around the league, it's a lot of places just they're not, for one reason or the other, are not able to tailgate. Either they're not allowed to in the stadium, or they don't own the stadium or whatever. And so we always thought it was a very normal thing to be doing extensive tailgating, but apparently that's not the deal. So a lot of the good times, is pre and post game. Tailgating usually starts 3 hours before kickoff, unless it's opening day or the 4th of July game, in which it's a noon start with mimosas. Yeah. There it is. The group's president and his lovely wife will bring the griddle, and we'll actually do French toast with the mimosas to get going on that 4th of July game. It's fantastic. There it is, French toast all day. Absolutely. So we got that going on. It's a really just nice social environment. You can walk around the area, talk to people once or twice in those couple hours, get your ideas on how the team's doing, what the lineup should look like, especially that like half hour before the lineup comes out, when everyone likes to talk about who's starting, who's sitting, because with Bob, you really don't know. And it's a great time to just have your thoughts about the game, how the team's doing, because you haven't seen them for 2 weeks or whatever. Our past president does fantastic Jello shots. So those get whipped out at some point. And we do more drinking there. Couple other drinking. Man, we do a lot of drinking now. I kind of run through a list. Another drinking game involving
Remember that.
Yeah. We play some AC/DC, and there's a drinking game involved with that.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that. What?
You ever do the Roxanne drinking game?
It sounds a lot like the Thunderstruck game we do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Man, hold on. Note to self. Let me write that down.
Roxanne.
Yeah. Hold on. Okay. Okay, got it. Good. We'll have to throw that in the rotation then. So yeah, a lot of alcohol fueled stuff. Mentioned before, the victory selfie, which kind of started a few years ago. Of all dumb things that people really got behind, was using a big group photo to celebrate who we thought the man of the match was. But that took off like wildfire. Everyone loves it. And I think some of the players kind of because after the game, win, lose, draw, they come by and do the handshake line, all that stuff. And I think some of them caught on to what was going on and kind of position themselves later in the handshake line, hoping they get asked. At least that's what we're going to go with. So that's become a big thing. We were doing the foot golf event before a lot of other groups started with that. But the course that we did at has since closed down, so we're not sure what the future of that will hold. We do a nice holiday party, which has been a really nice way to connect with the head coach and some of the front office people during the off season. That's gone very well. I feel like that's a lot of the bigger events we do outside of TIFO and sign making, all those kind of things that everyone does. But we do a good job of, we're going to have these events every 2.5 weeks throughout the season if there's not games going on. And then we have one big event in the off season, and we just outside of that complain about things online between sessions.
Brilliant. And I'm going to close with this. Primanti brothers, perfectly rated, overrated, underrated.
Certainly not overrated. Definitely not overrated.
Agreed.
I will go somewhere between rated and underrated, depending on what your choice of protein is on the sandwich.
Okay.
I respect that
The
answer.
problem,
I think that's well
so
put.
a couple years ago, not that I say protein, now I'm going to mention fish. I don't think that counts. They used to have two different size fish sandwiches, like a colossal and a smaller size. And the colossal's like, it's way too much fish. The ratio is way off, way off. And so I got the smaller size fish sandwich, and you load up with malt vinegar and a little ketchup on the fried side of the sandwich. And then they got rid of that. And now it's just the colossal, and it's just like you can't do it anymore. So now I've had to switch to the hot sausage and cheese sandwich, and it's also pretty good. The people that just do like hamburger meat on the sandwich, that's a waste. It's like their biggest seller, but it's come on now, that's a joke.
Disagree on that. All right.
What?
All right. How do we close this, Devin? Do we just do Thunderstruck, but instead say Lily Ball every time?
No, I've got an idea to make an exodus out of here that will get us all into trouble. That will rifle some feathers up there in the Northeast. Yep, go ahead.
Let's go Pens. Let's go Pens. Let's go Pens. Dev, finish it.
There you go. We are three honest lads, pun intended. There we go. Dan, got to be honest, buddy. It's been a fantastic trip on my end. I got to spend a little bit of time up there. Fantastic trip down memory lane. It's awesome to see what the group starts like, where it's come. I mean, you guys, full circle isn't the way to say it, because leaps and bounds from that 2007 meeting to one of the, I don't want to say more impressive, one of the fun supporters groups around the USL Championship that we get an opportunity to cover on a regular basis. So I'd like to start here and just say thank you so much, because you encompass so much material, my friend. So thank you.
I want to thank both gentlemen. It's been a fantastic chat. If you two ever do make it up the Highmark Stadium and are not on the clock, come on out. You'll obviously, as you've heard, there'll be plenty of various forms of alcohol to partake in, pregame and post. And hell, if you're on the clock, you can come over too, because we're not discriminating at all.
That's what I'm talking about. No discrimination. We do French toast. We do mimosas. We do three honest lads, Steel Army, Pittsburgh Riverhounds. We're going to go up there, Mike, and I'm envisioning it now. I can see with grandeur visions. We walk into the parking lot. We have an idea that Thunderstruck is playing in the background. Roxanne has turned out the red light. Lily Ball is in full effect. Tyler Passer has been knocked to the sideline. And the Pittsburgh Riverhounds reign supreme in the Eastern Conference. And they lift the trophy next to the Monongahela. We are three honest lads. Steel Army, thank you. Mike Watts, goodbye. Peace.